Okay, I think we're live. I think. Okay. So hi, I am Kayan Celestro, aka Kristen or Chris. I am a science fiction. Oh, wait, now is it live? Oh my goodness. Okay. This is the first time I've done a Facebook live stream and we can't tell if it's actually live or not. Okay, so I think it's live now. It says it's live. We'll try that again. My name is Kayan Celestro, aka Kristen or Chris. I am a science fiction and fantasy author. You can see books I've written in front here. So I've got my sci-fi trilogy, a tie-in novella, and my newest book, Cause of Death, which is my first fantasy book. So today for this live stream, I figured we would just talk about writing, maybe self-publishing, working on tie-in merchandise like plush that I've done. I do make and sell plush as Dragons by Chris over on Etsy, and I do art on Redbubble under the same name. So I've got a lot of different stuff going on. And if anybody watching wants to send in questions, we've got Ben over on the the stream monitoring to check stuff out. I think he's currently fooling around with additional lighting. We'll see. And then at the end of this, we'll do a reading from Cause of Death. See how that goes. Where are you going with that lamp? Okay. Yep. A lamp's moved around. Okay. So, yeah, for anyone who doesn't know me, I started off with Chasing Shadows. That is the first book that I ever wrote. It's an action-adventure sci-fi book. Follows a bounty hunter and a military officer who have to team up to save the galaxy from a threat. And their story spans 3 books, going next into Unbroken Light and then Light Runner to wrap up the trilogy. These books actually recently were named a finalist in the Next Generation Indie Book Awards, which is pretty cool. They sent me a medal. You can see here. It's got some weight to it. Like, this is a solid bit of metal. And Chasing Shadows actually won a silver medal in the Reader's Favorite Book Awards last year, which is also pretty cool. So they've been doing all right. Yeah, and it's always fun to show those off at C2E2, which is one of my favorite events to do out in Chicago. I was actually going to do Printers Row Lit Fest this year, and that ended up getting canceled, which is pretty sad, but it is what it is. Thank you, 2020. Fingers crossed for next year. I'm hoping in 2021 we'll be able to actually go back to live events. I think that's a lot more fun than just me sitting here talking into a microphone in front of my computer. I think maybe someday it'd be nice to actually get like a pretty good background going for this too, instead of just my Funko Pop collection and random assorted artwork. The artwork's nice, don't get me wrong. That's done by other people, and I love it all. But I think the Funko Pop collection probably the strangest thing to have up there. You can learn a lot about me based on like all of the characters I have there. Looks like, is that Brendan? Hey, Brendan. Oh, Brendan put in a request to see a big dragon. So, hey, Ben, could you do me a favor? Could you hand me the big dragon? Big dragon. Right here. Yeah. Thank you. Ask and you shall receive. We got the big wyvern here. This is one of the dragons that I made for my Dragons by Chris shop. One of my, what do the kids say these days? Absolute units of a dragon. I don't know if they still say that. I'm about to be 30. I guess that qualifies me as old. I don't know. According to Zoomers, I think that makes me old. Zoomers on TikTok would say that's old. But this dragon was requested, so showing off the dragon. All right. Let's put him away. Thank you. All right. So let's see. What else is going on? I've got upcoming projects this year. Probably not going to be published this year, but in 2021, I'm hoping. I should at least have a short fiction collection coming out. I'm calling it the Tales from 2020. It'll have nothing to do with pandemics and more to do with wizards and maybe one or two aliens. That's how I roll. A lot of them are actually based off of the Story Cubes rolls I do over on my YouTube channel. That's a lot of fun. It's kind of improvised fiction on the fly. So if you haven't checked those out, I recommend it, or just getting Rory Story Cubes for yourself, because that's pretty entertaining. Looks like we have a couple new viewers, so hi, welcome. Anybody just joining in, feel free to send in questions over the chat feature. I've got Ben over there monitoring the stream. He'll be able to tell me if something comes in. We just did introductions and talked about initial books. And oh, my next book I'm really excited for. I'm doing a lot of research for it, mostly on pirates, because I'm going to be writing about fantasy pirates with a magic system, and that's really exciting to me. We're going to go on the high seas and chase after dragons, so it's going to be fun. So that also means I get to read a lot of books about pirates, which is kind of a surprising dream come true. So if you ever want an excuse to do research on a cool topic, just start writing a novel about it. And you can just work that into your budget whenever you want. I would show you all of the books I'm using, but they're currently holding up this computer, so I can't show them to you. I'm sorry about that. But they're a lot of fun. Yeah, that's been an interesting process so far. One of the things people tend to ask me about is like how I start plotting books, and it's kind of evolved over the years. I know when I first did Chasing Shadows, I was kind of writing that just on the fly, but I was also writing that as a teenager initially. So I got pretty much the full story out, and then went to college, learned that I did not, in fact, know everything that there was to know about life, the universe, and everything. So after a lot of learning and unlearning and relearning, I did a full revamp of the book, and we ended up with this before you. But I did have a full story structure to work from because I had written so much of it as a teenager. So when it came time to work on the sequels, I ended up taking just a bunch of Post-it notes and throwing them up on a wall in our house. And it looked a bit like the lair that cops find when they're hunting like a serial killer on TV. Just like colored notes and some string just randomly thrown up on the wall. So if you didn't know what you were looking at, it was vaguely terrifying. I haven't gotten much better because this is a book now. This is what an outline for me looks like. It is literally Post-it notes thrown up on a big board and just strung out in order so that I can see it and easily move things around if I need to. Although half the time I have to squint at my own handwriting, because that hasn't improved much at all. If my mother saw it, she would be ashamed. Hi, Mom, if you're watching. So then from there, I've actually started doing a more detailed outline. I found myself kind of getting stuck on minute details of pirate life. Like, I tried going into the first draft of the book and found that I was just getting stuck on, is this what a pirate does when they have some off time, or do they do this? And I started just getting bogged down in details. So I went back to the outline stage and did a more detailed outline. And I recommend that for anybody working on writing, like, not to be afraid to go back to planning stages, because that is a huge part of writing, just being able to revise and revisit things on the fly. So I'm closing in on the final outline stages, and I'm going to go back into drafting. But it's a bigger, more ambitious project than some of the other stuff I've worked on, which is funny to say because this is just a space opera out in space, but somehow writing about aliens felt easier than writing about pirates. I guess because I could make up aliens and their biology on the fly, and I didn't have to worry about how to properly rig a mast, or how many masts a sloop has, or why a sloop is actually like a preferred pirate ship. There's a lot of really random details in there that you gotta think about. But that's what makes it fun. It's also a very different book than the previous one that I wrote, which is Cause of Death, which was just an idea I got one day um, about death solving a murder mystery. And that's the kind of thing where an idea pops into your head and you just can't let it go. You gotta just get it out there. So that's how Cause of Death came about. Let's see. Do we have any questions on there, Ben? Probably not yet, right? Let's see. I've got a couple of viewers. That's good. Ben's not answering my question. Hey, Ben. Do we have any questions on the stream?
No question.
No questions. Okay.
No.
All right.
I have a question though.
What's up, Ben?
What is the most interesting pirate story that has come up through your research?
The most interesting pirate story that's come up through my research. Huh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think back to ones. The book I'm reading right now is called The Pirate World, and it gives a really good like historical just foundation for everything. Covers a lot of wide-reaching things around the world and historical things, more so than I've seen in most pirate fiction or historical accounts or anything like that. So one downfall with it, I think, is that it does focus a bit more on like the golden age of piracy and the pirates you'd see there. So like that's gonna be like your Captain Vane and your Blackbeard and your Calico Jack, who by extension also worked with Anne Bonny and Mary Read. So the two most infamous female pirates were part of the same crew under Calico Jack, which is really interesting. They're the only ones that we have like firm records on. Although, oh, Grace O'Malley from Ireland is another female pirate, and that's pretty cool. I'm trying to remember what the most interesting one was. I know there was somebody who was sailing with Blackbeard, I think, and they had made an agreement to split up at one point and then re-meet and divide up their treasure. And what happened was Blackbeard pretty much just took it and ran because he's Blackbeard. And Blackbeard's a bit smarter than your average pirate, so he knew better than to hit up at the rendezvous point and give up half of the treasure that he was housing in his ship. So that was kind of fun. Yeah, there's also just a lot of really interesting stories about like pirate hunting tactics and things like that, and I think that's kind of the interesting part right now. You got another question?
We have a question from
We do.
Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah. Brian's wondering if you're still going to be taking commissions for custom dragons.
Ooh. I always wish I can, but right now they are kind of closed. I've had to close down my custom work because I just often don't have the time for it, and I sometimes feel bad. If people are willing to wait extra long for a dragon, I can, of course, take it on then. But it does tend to take me like a couple months to make a plush at this point. Purely because I'm also painting and doing the writing projects and working a full-time job. So a lot of my time has been sucked up by other things. But yeah, that said, you could always reach out to me and I can let you know if something's like within my scope or something like that. What I can and cannot do. Oh, our cat's checking out. Okay. The cat has entered the room. I always get distracted by her. She's currently checking out the things that are going around. And she's leaving. Bye, Marina. Okay. But that's the deal on custom plush work. Technically close on it, but I'm always happy to consider projects if you want to send them my way. Do we have any other questions on the stream? Not yet? Alright, cool. So let's see. What else I have on my itinerary? I can talk a bit about plush making, or at least more specifically, just the idea behind it. Because I started plush making like right after I graduated college, just as a way to like make some money. And when I started publishing, it occurred to me, hey, I could make stuff from my books, and that would be fun. And cat's back. And that turned out to be a really good way to just tie things in. It's a lot of fun to bring critters from the books to life. So you can see here I have the Arkans, I have Blade, who's actually a character in the trilogy, and she accompanies the bounty hunter character Lissa. So she's kind of my favorite. Don't tell the others. But the others, these little guys are actually made with special printed Minky. So Minky's a very soft, silky fabric. It's wonderful. I love it. It's hard to work with, but it's great. So these I actually designed myself and got the fabric custom printed so that I can make these cool designs. So we got like this emerald gemstone one, a little leopard one here, and then a calico. Because our cat is calico, and I just had to make something that kind of looked like her. She doesn't look quite like that, but it's close enough. So that's the Marina Arkan. But for anyone who is like doing their own writing work, if you can find ways to sort of tie in your fiction universes with merchandise, I highly recommend it. Not only is it a fun thing to explore for yourself, but it also is a great way to connect with a wider audience. I mean, people they like the plush. Because like if I'm at a convention, I have the plush out, people are like, what are these? And I'm like, well, have you seen this? And it's a great lead-in. Plus, everybody wants to take home an Arkan once they've read the book, provided they like it. So that's always fun. I mentioned earlier I'm going to be doing a short fiction collection. For that, I'm going to actually be doing some watercolor paintings. I didn't bring any of my paintings out to show because that just would have been too much stuff. This is actually my sewing / painting / crafting / working from home table. So usually this is covered in many other things, but I cleared it off for you guys to show all this stuff. Yeah, so once this is over, I'm gonna rush and put all of my stuff back on the table, and I will probably start doing some paintings to go with the short stories I've been writing. They're pretty fun. They're pretty random, but they're pretty fun. Let's see. I'm checking out my itinerary. Cat's back. Oh, you know what? Other things that I've seen other authors do by way of like merchandise tie-ins are things like pins or mugs. I have posters of like the planets that appear in here, so there's always stuff that you can do. Not everybody can draw as well as write, so you could always team up with an artist. For those who are self-publishing, you're going to want to do that anyway for your cover art, because you should absolutely get great cover art for your books. Let's see, what else can I say? Do we have a question? Nope. Okay. So I think at this point, I am going to go ahead and we're going to shift into a reading from Cause of Death. I'm going to get some water. You do not want my scratchy voice on this. Yeah, so I'm going to read the first chapter from Cause of Death, my newest book, and we will see how that goes. All right. And if anybody watching still has questions, feel free to send them in. We will get to them after the reading.
Ryan says that Orion is his favorite.
Aw, Orion is great. Orion is another Arkan from the trilogy. He's a good Arkan. Blade and Orion are good Arkans. Awesome. Okay. I should make an Orion plush again. I have Blade. Should make Orion. So that might come. Okay. But yeah, as I said, let's go into the reading for Cause of Death. The morning my entire world broke, I was slumped over my desk in my windowless bedroom. My legs were thrown haphazardly over the side of my chair. My face was buried in my arms against the surface of the desk, My spine was twisted in an uncomfortable angle to accommodate both of these things, and I was too exhausted to care. My room was small and dark, with my sturdy wooden desk and chair and the hard, narrow bed in the corner as the only furniture. The walls were bare, no trinkets or clutter resided anywhere, not even a rug on the hardwood floor. I liked it that way. Nothing to distract me whenever I went to work, and nothing to bother me whenever I needed a respite. Of course, that stolen moment was the first time in a long, long time that I'd actually been able to rest. So long, in fact, I found my empty room, usually so comforting in its austerity, crushing down around me. What had once been my retreat now felt more like my prison, and even though I knew I could stand up and walk out of the room at any time, the very thought of moving exhausted me all over again. I'd been working for days without stopping, and the air in my room was stale and stifling, but I could not bring myself to so much as twitch. I think I was afraid that I would break the moment of tranquility, rare and fleeting as they were. Perhaps I was being a tad dramatic, and I will admit that I remember thinking to myself that I would have given 6 of my ribs just to keep the silence and the solitude going for a little while longer. I just wanted a few minutes more before I had to return to work or emerge to clean up some disaster my roommates had managed to create, or some combination thereof. Then the smell of a freshly brewed pot of coffee seeped under my door. I did not get out of my chair so much as I was suddenly on my feet, bones creaking with stiffness. I relished the rich scent coming from the other side of the bedroom door as I stretched and cracked my various joints, all fears of a disaster forgotten when faced with the promise of the elixir of the mortals. They had gotten nearly everything wrong over the past few millennia, but coffee was so right. I drifted out of my blissfully dark room into the agonizing brightness of the sunlit hallway. I threw an arm across my face to block the light, and I let my feet guide me past my roommate's larger and overly lit bedrooms, past the front door, past the living room, past the bathroom we had no use for, and into the kitchen. "Morning, Death," Destiny's voice greeted me from the general direction of the table. I grumbled something resembling a response and dropped my shielding arm from my face. It took a long time for my senses to adjust to the sunlight pouring in through the east-facing windows over the sink, but my feet knew the way, and by the time I could see again, I was already fishing a mug, one of the big ones, out of the dishwasher. "Just so you know," Destiny began, but I cut her off with a raised finger. "What did we say about fate readings before coffee?" I asked as I went for the kitchen counter. The coffee maker was nestled contentedly between a gleaming toaster and the tidy library of brightly colored cereal boxes that were the main source of my female roommate's sustenance. The pot was full of steam and perfect black coffee. The liquid sloshed beautifully as I lifted the pot, a lovely ring of bubbles dancing across its surface. "It has to do with the coffee," Destiny said. That made me pause. "What is it?" "If you pour a cup before 9, you'll break the mug." "What time is it now?" "About 8:30. I considered this carefully. "How much is in the mug when it breaks?" "Oh, about half a cup." "Is that because I will have already consumed the rest of the coffee?" "Well, yeah, plus another full cup before that, but I poured the hot coffee and took a long, loud sip." I felt Destiny's disapproving stare on my back as I drank. She never liked it when I ignored her prophecies. But given that the mortals could defy her just by flexing their free will, it was laughable to think that she should have any control over my actions, never mind that she was usually right. I had learned a long time ago that it was best to enjoy the moment and worry about the consequences when, and if, they came. Also, half an hour was far too long to wait for coffee after I'd already smelled it. I saluted Destiny with my mug as I sat at the table. She wrinkled her nose at me and went back to devouring her bowl of neon breakfast cereal. "I still think you should wear a glamour when you're not in your room," she informed me, clearly still peeved over my decision to ignore her fate read. I held up my hand and admired the ways the bones caught the morning sunlight. "And stifle this natural beauty?" Destiny shot an exasperated sigh across the table. "At least wear something other than the robes. You make me feel like I'm an extra in a bad horror movie in my own kitchen." "Our kitchen," I corrected. "And I do wear these robes for a reason. As you may recall, the mortals and even some of our fellow forces tend to be prone to terror whenever they see the swirling void that is my core. You could cast a glamour to hide that. Glamours itch." Destiny huffed an exasperated sigh. "You're determined to never see our landlord except on Halloween, aren't you?" "I feel our annual 2-minute conversation on the repetitiveness of my so-called costume and the various historical inaccuracies of his has been honed to perfection." Destiny gave up the argument and went back to her cereal. I returned to my coffee, content with the silence. I took more time with my second mug, out of both enjoyment and a desire to procrastinate before shuffling back to my room and calling my reapers in. As I drank, I idly wondered what would be the trigger that could possibly cause me to drop the mug. Would I be holding it? Would it be sitting on the edge of my desk when I summoned my reapers and began the tedious task of distilling the souls? Would one of the Reapers knock the mug off the desk in their eagerness to get to me first? So many possibilities. So many ways to tease Destiny about her mundane little prophecy. But I was not feeling cruel and decided to let the moment pass. After all, it wasn't every day that we got to enjoy a quiet morning. Which did beg a certain question. "Where is Life?" I asked. "Still in his room," Destiny said. She took a sip of coffee so overloaded with cream and sugar it was almost white. Actually, she may have just been drinking cream and sugar at that point. To have included coffee in that concoction would have been a crime against creation. Last night, he said he was getting close to finishing something big, and then Life locked himself in. I haven't seen him since. I groaned. Lately, and in spite of my protests, Life had been throwing himself into creation, spitting out creature after creature in a desperate attempt to have something he could completely call his own. He tried in earnest to make his creations beautiful. He understood and appreciated the perfection of delicate colors and bold patterns alike, and knew how to balance symmetry with non-uniformity. And yet he always forgot some key feature, like a functioning brain, or lungs, or, in one very tragic case, a skeletal structure. That poor thing had been a screaming puddle of feathers and organs on the floor by the time Life had dragged Destiny and me back to his room to see it. Destiny had not found that particular attempt anywhere nearly as funny as I had. "You know, I think he does it," Destiny asked, pulling me out of my reverie. Admittedly, I cared not for the theories behind why Life was piling onto my workload, but I was open to another excuse to linger over coffee before getting back to work. "Enlighten me," I said. "I think he's trying to counterbalance your creation." That managed to catch my interest. "Do you mean my Reapers?" "Exactly," Destiny said. "You made something on the mortal world born of you and you alone. I think that scares him." I motioned for her to go on. "I think Life is looking for their counterbalance," she explained. "You two built the entire mortal world around the promise of balance, but with you finishing the Reapers, I think he feels threatened." "He did make that one species of jellyfish," I pointed out, rather lamely. Destiny gave me a small, patient smile. "Yes, but you modified them so that they could be eaten and therefore die." "I had to ensure that they could exist on the mortal world without violating the contract," I said. Truth be told, I should have pushed for more changes to the deathless creature than I had. That particular species of bagfish could still threaten the contract if the right stars aligned. I let that be, however, and instead pointed out that my Reapers did not exist in every sense of the word. They could interact with souls, certainly, but beyond harvesting their assigned targets, they were incapable of impacting the mortal world. They were surrogates for me, created so that I would not have to divide my attention across every dying being on Earth. Exhausted and diminished as their making left me, my migraines and moods had improved exponentially ever since I'd sent the first wave of Reapers out. I had also been very careful with them, ensuring that the Reapers had no power of their own beyond what I bestowed upon them. I gave each of the Reapers a small piece of myself, lessening my own power in exchange for a chance to rest, however brief that ultimately turned out to be. With Destiny's help and Justice's blessing, I had also run exhaustive tests and calculations to ensure that the contract would remain intact long before I created my first Reaper. I knew all too well what the consequences of a contract violation were. We all did. It was the agreement we made in exchange for a chance to benefit from the mortal world, a chance to flex our influence and grow our power without tearing apart our home realm eternity. We had beneficial impacts on the mortal world more often than not, and in return, the mortal world gave us room to grow and the chance to better understand ourselves. To violate the contract was to invite capital punishment, and even I had cause to fear that. When I reminded Destiny of this, she agreed. "But I do think that Life feels like he needs to keep up with you," she said. "Keep up with me?" I said. "Did you see how many souls he put out last week alone? I can barely keep up with him." Destiny gave me another soft smile. "He says the same thing about you, and he's afraid of being left behind. It's just in his nature, I think." My mug of coffee was down to a little more than half full at that point. I swirled it absently, wondering what Life's next attempt would look like. I think that Destiny and I both knew that if Life succeeded in creating a truly deathless creature, I would either need to find a way to destroy it or banish it from the mortal world. The decision would hinge on how pretty it was. Something beautiful could potentially find a permanent home in eternity. Everything else would meet the sharp end of my scythe. Given Life's penchant for aesthetics, chances of an endless existence among the forces were high. Of course, given his extensive record of failures, it was very unlikely that we were anywhere near that possibility. I had the sudden thought that perhaps Life could use a vacation along with me. It had been a while since we'd had time together without work getting in the way, and if this next attempt was a failure, a trip away from the mortal world could have done us both some good. My thoughts slipped back to life's past creations, and I absently tried to imagine this new species. I had hoped for something sleek and muted in color, but I would not have minded a dark iridescence to it. A living embodiment of black opal, perhaps. Life had been drawing inspiration from gemstones lately, and if he could remember to get the details right, he had the potential to create a very beautiful creature in I've done it! Deed. I jumped in my seat and felt the mug start to slip through my fingers. With a lurch and a slosh of coffee over the edge, I managed to keep my grip on the handle as my partner came sailing into the room. A few precious drops of coffee fell to the floor, but the mug and the majority of the still steaming drink were saved. I gave Destiny a smug look as I carefully set the mug on the table, well away from the edge. Destiny glared into her cereal and tried to sneak a look at the clock on the wall without me noticing. I have finally, absolutely, unquestioningly done it, Life proclaimed, practically dancing across the kitchen. He paused long enough to plant a kiss on my forehead before spinning away and pumping his fists in the air. In spite of my exhaustion and certainty that this would be more work for me, I smiled as I rose from the table and moved to grab the paper towels. I always liked seeing Life happy, even if it signaled trouble for me. So-called evolution can kiss my ass, Life sang. I've finally created the perfect species. What have you unleashed upon the lowly mortals this time? I asked, as I bent to clean up the spill, my victory over Destiny's prophecy taking on a bittersweet note. Spilled coffee was still spilled coffee, after all. Life began to tell us of his decision to work small this time, probably for the best, and, much as he loved to add them, leave off any unnecessary ornaments, absolutely for the best. He'd created a bipedal creature, fluffy with shining silver fur and a head that could rotate 180 degrees on a well-protected neck. It was nocturnal, used small primate-like hands to gather food, and ran from place to place on strong, silent legs. He described it in such loving detail, even I was partially enamored with it by the time he was done. There was just one problem. Life, my darling, I said, did you remember to give it the ability to breathe? He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The smile drained from his face, and his eyes lost focus as he thought back on his precious project. That was answer enough. I'll take care of it, I told him, just as I always did. It wasn't Life's fault, really. It simply was not in his nature to consider all of the things that could destroy something. But that was more than an inconvenience for me, since I was the one who had to clean up his messes. At least Life had a sense of humor, and once he'd worked through his grief, he let Destiny tease him about this latest overlooked detail in a long, catastrophic series of overlooked details. Life made a remark about being glad that I was always there to fix his mistakes. My response was a strained smile. Destiny caught my expression. Poor Death really needs their vacation soon, she said. My smile was more genuine this time. More than you know. Life looked over his strong shoulder than me. Are you still set on taking one? He asked. Oh, absolutely. I thought I'd mentioned that before. Several times, he said. Yesterday alone, Destiny added. I drained my coffee mug and then refilled it to the brim, making sure Destiny saw my every move. I was sure you'd break it, she grumbled. I watched her over the rim of the mug as I slurped another gulp. Would you leave? Life asked. I broke off my petty battle with Destiny to look at him. The mortal world, he said, tracing a knot in the wood grain of the table. Would you leave it if you took a break? I had been so busy that I had not seriously considered what I would do with the vacation once I got it, but I knew the answer to that question. Yes, I told him. It would be nice to see something other than the mortals and the inside of this apartment for a change. If you were a glamour, Destiny grumbled, you could go outside. We live near a lovely park, and the nightlife a few blocks over is exciting enough that the mortals might not even notice your creepiness. I took another loud sip of coffee. How long do you think you'd stay away? Life asked. He kept his voice casual, but I knew what he was asking. I reached out and squeezed his shoulder. Not too long, I said. I remembered my earlier thought of inviting him along with me, but I still owed him for the unbreathing mess he'd left me in his room and his earlier teasing. Destiny abruptly gave a pointed cough, clearly aiming to distract Life and me from each other. How close are your reapers to being independent? She asked. Very, I said, settling back against the wall with my coffee again. They have been out on their own for a while now, and I just set off what I hope is the last wave. I'm giving them a little time to test their wings and see how they do before I introduce them to the soul distilling process. But they've been doing perfectly so far. This time next year to see me packing up my scythe and bidding you a fond farewell. You don't want to leave your oversized farming tool with me? Destiny asked. What do the mortals say? I traced the rim of my mug. I trust you as far as I can throw you? I'm an incorporeal cloud, Destiny said. You couldn't throw me at all. That would be my point, yes. Destiny and Life were both laughing now, and I was smiling in the sunlight. Everything felt right. And then something slipped out of kilter, and the world seemed to stop. I knew that it hadn't. Time was still running the way it was supposed to, and life was grinning sheepishly at a fresh barb from destiny. But there was something very, very wrong in the universe now. Almost like a nasty feeling wrapped itself around my spine, and a shiver ran through me. Life froze in bewildered horror a moment later, and then Destiny was on her feet, trembling. They both turned to look at me as the bad feeling crept up my back and through my skull. I felt it leave me as quickly as it came, but it sapped away a good chunk of what little energy that morning had given me, and left an aching pain in its place. I recognized the warning, but the bad feeling wasn't done with us yet. It coated the room like a thick fog, growing denser as something approached. It finally coalesced at the kitchen window, and I turned to see one of my reapers perched on the sill. The reaper knocked its hoof against the glass and rustled its leathery wings. I could see light seeping through the thin skin of its body, right where it would have stored a swallowed soul. The reaper would not look at me. All three of us had been given a warning. Then one of my reapers had come to me unsummoned, loaded with a soul and ashamed of itself. This could only mean one thing. The contract had been breached. The coffee splattered my rose. My mug shattered on the floor. And that's the first chapter of Cause of Death. So, in case you couldn't tell. Oh, do we have a question?
No, we have someone, Catherine Almeida says hi.
Hi! How are you? Yes, so that was a reading from Cause of Death. The book does follow the immortal force of death as they try to track down what happened behind the contract breach and what caused the soul to be taken before its time. And they journey across both the mortal world and their home realm of eternity, trying to seek out the culprit responsible for this. And they meet a very wide cast of characters, from the highly energetic war to the number obsessed and infuriating twins Chance and Fortune, to the mysterious Dreaming, and the elusive Inspiration, who is just never home when you need her to be. It was a very fun book to write. It's very different from everything else I've ever written, but it was just fun to do. Let's see. So again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to send them in. Comments too, that'd be great. Otherwise, all my books are available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, the Apple iBook Store, some other spots too. I can't remember all the places, but Smashwords has them too. Did we get a question or a comment? You have a question?
Yeah.
Ben has a question.
Well, I was wondering, just with everything that's been going on, you had a lot of live events canceled on you.
I have.
I'm wondering how that sort of just how's your mindset for all basically being an author right now?
Okay, so if you couldn't hear it, question is, how's your mindset for being an author right now, especially in light of all the live events that have been canceled? It's been tough. I mean, I know this year has been tough for everyone, because this is not a normal year. I think a lot of people saw 2020 coming, and we all said, this is going to be our year. This is going to be fine. It's going to be great. We've got this. And then a literal plague washed across the globe. So it's been tough for everyone. That said, I hope everyone is safe. I hope you and your loved ones are safe. But yeah, just in terms of a creative standpoint, it's been tough. It's hard to balance that constant stream of like dread and panic that apparently accompanies the global plague, with the need and the drive to create something. I wish I had some surefire way to say this is how you overcome that and just get yourself to put stuff out, but it's hard. So I think my main takeaway from this year has just been to be kind to yourself, to work where you can, as you can, to learn to be okay if you can't crank out something every single day, too. I know sometimes it can be disappointing if that can't happen, and there's a lot of pressure on creators to just continuously be putting things out. because if we don't, then our audience kind of forgets that we exist. Hopefully not you guys, though. You guys are great. Yeah, but there's this constant need to stay relevant in today's world. And that's hard to do when you are constantly feeling like despair. This ended up being a way grimmer answer than I think we wanted to hear, but it is the truth. And long version short is that it's tough. And it's something you have to push yourself to keep doing. Be kind when you don't always meet the goals that you wanted yourself to meet. And just learn to be your own cheerleader in a way. How else we doing? Anything else, Ben?
Just we had some compliments, but
oh, that's nice.
People seem to like what they heard.
Oh, good. Thank you, everyone. It's very nice of you.
Yeah, that was a really grim answer you gave.
It was, yeah.
There's some hope on the table.
There's some hope. I mean, there's always hope. Because I mean, at the same time, like, my personal silver lining is because I don't have to commute to work every single day because I've been trapped in a 1-bedroom apartment for months on end. That means that I don't have to spend like 2 hours every day commuting to and from work. So that's 2 extra hours to read or work on writing or something like that. So that sometimes is a silver lining. I had to get water. It's right here. Do we have anything else? Want me to wrap it up? Okay, Ben says wrap it up. Ben's also very distressed.
We'll work on her having a producer skills later.
Yeah, that's something I don't have. I do everything myself, so like I roped poor Ben into helping me on this like kind of last minute, and he's just like he's doing his best. He's good. This is all me. Yeah, but I think it is time to wrap it up. So I will say thank you everyone who jumped on the stream to watch in. Everybody sending questions. This is gonna go up on Facebook and YouTube after. So if you couldn't watch here, you'll be watching in the future. So hello, future viewers. For present viewers, thank you again. You are great. It was great seeing you. And if you have any further questions, you can absolutely send them my way. I'll answer you however you email, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want. So thanks again. Remember, you can find all of my stuff on Amazon. I am on Etsy and Redbubble as Dragons by Chris. And I am working hard to bring you new stuff all of the time. So thank you. And stay with me as we finish out this year and keep going into the future. All right, thanks everybody. And I'm going to come around and hit the end live video button. So this is going to be an awkward conclusion.